Rolling live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, another edition of Beef Up Front coming your way. All things college football. He is Ryan Beef Coyle. I am John Brayson. We got a lot to get to. Beef, I think we took last week off. I have not spoken to you via Beef Up Front since your trip to Knoxville.
Yeah.
So just give us the 60 seconds Knoxville trip, catching the Vols in action, victory on a Saturday night. What was it like?
Yeah, it just means more. The phrase definitely fits the description, the atmosphere. It was really cool for first time going to SEC country. I think the biggest thing was just like the noise and the amount of people in their seats like an hour before the game. Like we got in there, I think 50 minutes left on the clock for warmups, and that stadium was 75% full already. It's just like you think the link's big with 65,000, and then you kind of look across the sideline in a 103,000 seat stadium, and you're just like, wow, it's massive. But really cool, really like old though. Like you can tell it's an old stadium. The concourse was about like could fit like three people wide, so that was my only kind of complaint. It was hard to go back and get another beer. But yeah, awesome experience, and already looking for a trip for next year. I think we're talking South Carolina, LSU, or Alabama potentially.
Ooh, I like it. We're going to talk a little bit about Tennessee. Of course, they got a big matchup this weekend against Georgia. We'll find out how Nico looks in person and whether or not he'll be playing on Saturday. We got a lot to discuss here. All things college football for the next hour. All right, Beef. People are yelling, and it feels like it's a little bit different than years past, where I have always been on the side of everybody relax. This is going to work itself out. And I get it. Last year with Florida State undefeated, some might say it didn't work itself out. Georgia missing. Of course, you could roll that into the equation. But for the most part, 90% of the time, these sort of things just figure themselves out over the long stretch of the season, which, oh, by the way, we have 3 weeks of regular season action and then conference championship games. But this feels a little different with the 12-team playoff. It seems like some of these tie-breaking options as you go down are a little fluky.
Yep.
It's nothing is really the same for some of these teams. They don't play the same schedule, might be in the same conference. You're going to have some teams that some good teams with 2 losses. Some are even trying to pitch the idea of LSU with 3 losses. Again, I'm not going to get too crazy, but where do you stand as far as the meter is concerned? 5 being, yo, we're going to have anarchy as soon as this bad boy's done, versus 1, it works itself out.
I think 5 for sure, because I think
Ooh.
you're going to have potentially an 11-1 team from the Big Ten on the outside looking in. But I'd say there's a 90% chance that there's a 10-2 team from the SEC that gets left out between Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia. I think those are kind of the 4 kind of teams there in the running for that. Texas, you throw them in there as well at 5. Texas A&M could be 6 as well. There's going to be 2 really kind of sour teams at the end. I think one from the SEC, one from the Big Ten, because you could also kind of lump Notre Dame into there as well if they finish the season at 11-1. But there's going to be a lot of 10-2 and 11-1 teams, and only basically 11 spots to fill, because you have to fill the G5 spot. You have to fill the Big 12 and the ACC are only going to be 1 bid leagues, I think. And then you kind of got to go from there. Like there's a path still where LSU can go to the SEC title game. And if they win the SEC title, they're obviously automatically in the playoff, and they would be in there as a 3-loss team. If they don't win, it's kind of like in the conference tournaments in college basketball, like a bid stealer, like a team that wouldn't be going to the tournament or wouldn't be going to the playoff in this scenario. They get that kind of bid steal due to some tiebreakers, and one of their losses being at the beginning of the year to USC. So that is one of the potential flaws in the system right now. It's like LSU has a really bad loss to USC, but only has 2 losses in SEC play. And because of tiebreakers, who they beat, who they lost to, who they played on the schedule, there's still a path for them to get in. And they're not even one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the SEC. And they might leave out, a Tennessee or a Georgia because of that.
Even though they're 6-3 at this point in time, sure, that's if they run the table over the next 3 weeks, correct?
Yeah, well, they would have to run the table, and then they would have to win the SEC title game as well.
What's the yeah, so what's the chances of LSU going over the next 3 weeks beating Florida, Vandy, and Oklahoma? Like I just see a slipping up there one of those games. They're not a good football team, right? Like I could see Vandy hanging with them. I know it's on the road in LSU, but I would give Vandy probably the best shot out of those three. Florida's playing a little bit better, and that's a road game down in the swamp. Of course, that's coming up this weekend, but for you, where do you stand on that conversation? Is LSU going to run the table?
Yeah, it's a weird spread this weekend. It obviously is dependent on Lagway, but I think by the spread, it's kind of baked in there that Lagway will be back. And you said the last game's Oklahoma, I
Correct.
believe. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that they go 3-0. LSU's biggest problem has been running quarterbacks this year. You look at what obviously Milrow did last week, over 100 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, and then what Marcel Reed did. If you're just getting some stationary kind of pocket quarterback, so your prediction of potentially Vandy there being the biggest threat. But if you limit and you look outside these mobile quarterbacks, they've been pretty solid. And Lagway is more of a pocket passer himself; he can run, but there is a path. If you want to go off on a little bit of a side thing, I saw a tweet yesterday. I want to see if I can find it though for the path to LSU to make it to the playoff.
Well, again, like I said, to me, I think we could push LSU to the side, right? Like if they run the table, that's a hell of a run to close up the season where they haven't been playing all that well. They got smacked against Alabama, in one man's opinion, one man's take on that. So I don't foresee them running the table. So I would almost say like, okay, let's put them to the side. Now you do have a team like Texas A&M. They'll have an opportunity to go up against Texas. Texas has what, one loss on the season? Yeah,
Yep.
they're 8-1. So if
But they
that's the
play
case,
A&M in the last game at A&M, and that's the first time
correct.
that rivalry game has been played in, I think, over a decade.
So it could be a chance that look, in the grand scheme of things, I think you're right. We will have anarchy. I don't know necessarily if it's going to involve LSU. I understand it's on the other side coming into the SEC championship game. I get that perspective, but yeah, it's looking like, and I guess it's looking like it's going to be anarchy. But it brings me to the next question, and the criteria, I believe, and I haven't read the thing in great detail, and I would honestly believe I said to you a couple weeks ago that I felt like something might slide in last second. Like to me, these people just go about it week to week, and I don't have an issue with that. Some people do. Some people want X, Y, and Z on the paper. I want to know if this team does this. That's what, like, dude, this has got to have some feel to it. If not, then go to the computers. Go to the
Yep.
BCS. It's got to have some feel to it. So I guess long-winded question would be at the end of the deal here, and you got to make the selection. You got your automatics, but then do you want the next best teams? Or are you going teams that you think deserve due to what they did in their conference? Like to me, it should be, hey man, I want the 12 best teams. That's how I look at it. Now,
Yep.
does that necessarily mean 4 SEC teams get in? No, it can't. It can't. There are other good football teams. And if you're in this position to make a selection to be on the committee, then you should know, be able to separate who's a lucky team, who's a team that's been dominant, who's a team that's getting hot at the right moment. Like, I think we're making too much of a big deal about it. Of course, it's a huge deal. So where do you stand on that? Is it the best teams at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it goes right back to the NCAA tournament. But the thing with at the NCAA tournament, you have so much more of a sample size of these teams and so many more games. In college football, it's only 12 games. In some of these teams' case, could be 13 games with the title game. That was the biggest, I think, gripe and discussion point this morning after Georgia was left out because they have the number one strength of schedule in the country and the number three strength of record. And they're on the outside looking in with 2 losses right now. Obviously a huge
Well,
opportunity
let me
this week.
let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. Let's focus on that. All right, they lost those 2 games though. Like they
Yeah.
lost 2 games. They lost to Alabama and they lost to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you could talk to me about the strength of schedule, but when you don't win those games, I don't know. I kind of chalk it up as, hey man, you had your opportunity, you lost.
Yep. Yeah, but then it kind of also goes back to, do you think Georgia is one of the 12 best teams in the country? And I think that's going to be the most fascinating thing about Notre Dame because I know Florida State's not much, but still, you're beating an ACC school 52-3 last week. some of the beatdowns that Notre Dame has put on some teams this year. But at the end of the day, they're still going to have that loss to Northern Illinois, who might not even make a bowl game on their schedule. Is that going to be used against them? Or do they want to put the 12 best teams in? Because Notre Dame's a team, too, that doesn't even have the opportunity to win their conference. They have to obviously get one of those at-large spots. And then you can look at Indiana, too. Indiana's looked great. They've dominated. But who have they really played against? Who have they beat? Michigan was their toughest game last week, and that one came down to the wire. Obviously, they have a chance next week against Ohio State to completely put themselves in, lock themselves in with a win there. But are they one of the 12 best teams in the country? Are they one of the teams with the 12 best resumes in the country? We have nothing to point to, though, from years past. It's all a new ordeal, a new experiment, no data points to turn to. So I think that's the most fascinating thing, and why some people might be really caught off guard, because my most surprising takeaway from the playoff rankings last night was Penn State being at number 4. They're the number 6 seed in the bracket, but sitting there at number 4 with one loss, that makes me believe that as long as they win their last 2 games, they're safely in. But you look at who they've beaten: Wisconsin on the road, USC on the road, and then Illinois at home. Those are really kind of their 3 marquee wins, and they pissed down their leg in the biggest game against Ohio State. They won that one. They're obviously in the playoffs. So that's my biggest kind of thing. You got 4 Big Ten teams there in the top 5. That just gives me more of a reason to believe that one of these SEC teams, and in this scenario for this week, Georgia was the one on the outside looking in.
It's interesting.
But here's the scenario that for the SEC. So it's if every SEC favorite wins the next 3 weeks, plus Arkansas beats Missouri, then LSU would be in the SEC championship game against Texas A&M. So that's the crazy thing.
And then with A&M's got 2 losses and LSU's got 2 losses at that point in time, or A&M only has 1?
So
A&M would only have 1.
Well, they would have. I would assume that would be them beating Texas.
Correct.
But the graphic that I have is a little bit confusing.
Okay.
For who's winning.
Yeah, look, the committee is going to have to weigh how unbelievably talented the SEC is. And I don't think that they've had an issue in years past doing that to a point, and I don't suspect that they will this year. Mm-hmm. Now, you're right about Penn State. You know, the fact that they are viewed in such manner with that spot at this point in time, can that change over the next 3 weeks? Maybe not. Maybe not. Plus, these championship games come into play, right? Don't these, like, do you get extra points for making it in the committee's eye, getting to that championship game? These are things.
Sorry, 1 second. The reason why I was a little bit confused, I lumped them both together. If every SEC favorite wins the next 3 weeks, plus Arkansas beats Missouri, then it is LSU in the championship versus the winner of Texas and Texas A&M, which is the last.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
That makes more sense. Okay.
All right. Well, we already got bogged down. It's okay though. We got 3 weeks. It's a lot of people yelling on my timeline, all of our timelines right now. So I just wanted to make it about as simple as possible. And again, we are painting the most chaotic scenario, no matter the league, no matter the schedule, no matter the team. And there's a good chance that it won't happen. But if it does happen, we'll see what the committee does. One last one on Notre Dame, though. And I'm curious to know where you stand, because the pushback, I would say, is, man, that was on September 7th. This team has been rolling. They've proved their worth. And if they run the table from September 7th all the way to their final game, I don't know how you keep them out.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame is going to be in. Like, if you made me pick between, if it came down to the last 2 spots and it was 11-1 Notre Dame versus 11-1 Indiana, and Indiana's only loss was to Ohio State, I think it would depend maybe how close of a game it was. But I would still probably put Notre Dame in, just because I believe Notre Dame is a better football team. And I love Indiana. It's been an awesome story. It'd be awesome to see them in. But I just think Notre Dame has been a better team, and they had one slip up, obviously a major slip up, but you can't tell me that they're not one of the 12 best teams in the country right now.
I agree with that. Throwing up 51 against Navy, 52 against Florida State, handled Georgia Tech on the road, beat Louisville, Look, I get it. I mean, they threw 66 up against Purdue. It's not even like they're skirting by on some of these games. They are absolutely crushing them. They got Virginia, they got Army, and they got USC to close up shop. 3 very winnable games. Style points are there, man. It's the NBA Cup taking over. Go ahead and run up the score, and we'll see what happens. What's exciting, I did not think that Notre Dame would be in this position, so credit to them and for making it happen and getting here. All right, so we got some big time college football action. Of course, every game means much more these days, and we are taping this on Wednesday night. So Thursday night, let's kick things off there. Anything for you on ECU and Tulsa, as we will have the Eagles and Commanders on screen 1, but this could very well get screen 2, knowing that I am supportive of the Pirates.
Yeah, nothing for me on that one. My focus is on Eagles -3 in that one. I think just NFL point in there. I think the Eagles are going to roll tomorrow. But it's when you look at this kind of spot, Eastern Carolina definitely motivated. They win this game.
Eastern Carolina.
Yeah.
East. They don't go by Eastern Carolina.
Sorry to disrespect the Pirates, but if they win this game, they get to their 6th win of the year, and they get
there
to
it is.
So
nice.
That's a big one, kind of in that spot.
All right, Jansen's an alum, and I tried to go to school there, but things didn't work out. So I attended the community college and bartended there. So how about that? Anyways, moving on. College football weekend. Oh, anything on Friday? We got Wyoming and Colorado State, North Texas, UTSA. That's a small spread. UCLA. I know that half of the gambler gang is on UCLA under 5.5. So I'm sure that everyone's pulling for Washington there. They're 4-point favorites, and Arizona, Houston to close up shop Friday night at 10:15. 1-point spread for Arizona.
Yeah, I like 2 plays on Friday night. Actually, I do like UCLA plus the 4 there. They've won 3 in a row, and I think quietly have been playing really well. Like, they got rolled by Indiana in week 2. But since then, their losses are at LSU, versus Oregon, at Penn State, and versus Minnesota. Those are all, quality losses. And then since then, they've beaten Rutgers, Nebraska, Iowa. At Washington, I think that they're a live dog. They haven't given me a reason to not believe that. They've been playing really well recently. But sure, I'll take the +4. And then I really like Arizona on Friday night. Been a pretty disappointing season for them, 3-6, only 1-5 in the Big 12. But Favita's still a quarterback. McMillan's still at wide receiver. A chance for these two guys in kind of their last year together at Arizona, get a big time kind of prime time win on Friday night. So you're giving me them -1 against a Houston team that has been a surprise in a kind of positive light for a team that was expected to be a 2-3 win team. They already have 4 wins, but they're still nothing great, nothing special. I like Arizona to win that game at home on Friday night.
All right, let's get into the Saturday card and talk about some of the more yelling on the timeline. Big noon kickoff. Are you a fan of it, Beef?
I watch college football from noon to midnight every Saturday, so it's whatever's on, it's on. I don't really complain, but the 3:30 slot is definitely my favorite. I would go 3:30, 7:30, noon if you're making me rank the 3.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but I have no issue with Fox creating this and getting a noon kickoff. I understand it from the perspective of Ohio State. I think you have to mix it up, and they should take inventory on some of the complaints and not just push them off. No, you need to listen, especially if you care about the programs, the university, the fans, which should be number one. I think you got to take that under advisement and move around and try and find some bigger spots and work with the commissioner. Come on, man, it can't be that difficult. So
yeah, Ohio State ends with 6 straight games, I think.
Yeah. Stupid.
Yeah,
stupid.
They had doing against Marshall on like week 4 or something. Like we seriously can't find a better game to put if you're trying to make it a appetizing window.
That's correct. All right, let's go ahead. Possible dogs here covering from the jump. You ready? 3 games, noon window. You got Northwestern in that game, 28.5-point dog there. Arkansas catching 13.5 at home against Texas, and Pitt catching 10 at home against Clemson. If you had to tell me one dog or multiple dogs that are barking, where you at?
I'm going to go with Pitt there, +10. They had a demoralizing loss last week against Virginia. Must win, absolute must win. If they have any chance at making it to the ACC title game, they're going to need to win this one and get some help along the way. It's probably not going to happen, but I think they're a very desperate team, and this is a spot that I think a team gets up for. You got Clemson, still a national power in most people's eyes, come into town this week. I think it's a game that Narduzzi is able to get them up for. I think that they're a live dog. They could win that game, but I definitely like them to keep that one under 10. Clemson, their hot streak on offense has really kind of cooled off these past few weeks. They had the loss to Louisville. Last week, they only put up, I think it was 24 on Virginia Tech. So that high-powered Clemson offense that we saw taking advantage of some inferior opponents has came back down to earth a little bit. I like Pitt to keep it close this week and cover the 10.
All right. Anything else on either of those games? Ohio State, Northwestern, 28.5, and Texas, Arkansas, 13.5.
Yeah, I think Arkansas plus 13.5 could be worth a look. This is the same Arkansas team that shut down Tennessee in Arkansas, but then also got ran off the field and let up 63 points to Ole Miss just a couple weeks ago. So, which version of Arkansas shows up? Arkansas did beat Texas a couple years ago with Pittman and Sark, so that's something to look for. Maybe he has his number, but I think this one could be held within the 13.5. Texas looked really good last week, but DJ Lagway wasn't playing for Florida. They had a third string quarterback in there who is a transfer from Yale slinging the rock for them. So not much of a test last week. I think Arkansas could give them a bit of a scare and keep that one close as well if you're looking at another dog.
All right, noon kickoff as well. Colorado 11.5-point home favorites against Utah here. Colorado, they are absolutely getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so. 7-2 on the season, 5-1 conference. Of course, BYU remaining undefeated after last week's unbelievable win against Utah here. They are 9-0 on the season at the top of the Big 12. Beef, where you at in this one? Because I'll tell you what, I don't know too many teams that have been covering the number quite like the Buffaloes. Deion's got that team ready to play 11.5. I'm willing to lay that number, but it is a little interesting spot here. Noon kickoff early, maybe reading the press clippings a little bit here, but I don't know what hasn't been said already about Colorado. So, but I would lay the number here at 11.5. Where you at?
Yeah, what is that? 10 a.m. out there?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, that's a real early kickoff for these guys. But if I was making a play, I don't have one in this game, I would lay it with Colorado. I think when you look at Utah, last week was their Super Bowl. They've had a real demoralizing season, projected to win the Big 12 favorite. And here they are sitting right near the bottom, and the team kind of right behind them was Oklahoma State. So you look at kind of the two favorites in the conference at the beginning of the year are going to finish probably first and second to last potentially, which is just college football in a nutshell for you. But last week was their Super Bowl against BYU. It's a really tough to come back from a game like that. I didn't see the call, but I heard they got robbed on a call late, then they lose on a walk-off field goal. That's something like tough to bounce back from, and especially tough season. And Colorado has got that swag, has got that mojo kind of going right now. Sky high confidence. I think that could actually be like a lower scoring game with just a little bit of a sleepwalk through the first half kind of. But if you made me take a pick, I would go with Colorado minus 11.5.
All right, let's hit the 3:30s. Penn State and Notre Dame. We've seen them face off against each other in the prediction as far as the bracket is concerned last week. I like that game. They're both kicking off at 3:30. Notre Dame against Virginia, 22.5. Penn State, 29-point favorite against Purdue. Favorites both ways, 1-1. Dogs barking. Where do you stand at 3:30 on Saturday here?
Virginia's been a frisky team this year. They've won a couple games that they shouldn't have last week going to beat Pitt. But Notre Dame just looks different right now, man. I think last week, too, with Virginia beating Pitt, they might be riding a little bit high coming off of that one. I think Notre Dame is able to kind of bring them back to earth and take advantage in that one. And then Penn State and Purdue. I'm not touching that one, but James Franklin historically beats up on these teams when he's a large favorite, likes to bake that in. And you were saying it at the beginning, like both these teams sitting there at 11-1, but any real kind of quality wins on that schedule? I mean, solid wins, but not top tier wins. Bake up your stats as much as you can. Get those points per game up. Lower your points against, and just make a more intriguing resume for yourself. And Notre Dame has certainly been doing that. And Marcus Freeman, actually, the number one coach against the spread since he was hired in 2022. If you're feeling confident in the trends, potentially look to lay Notre Dame there. But if I'm taking a pick in either of those games, I'm laying them with the favorites.
That's an interesting stat there. You're right. Something to keep an eye on because, look, in its simplest form, they will look at common opponent if it's there. And when you have Notre Dame throwing 66 up against Purdue back in week 4, whatever it was,
Yeah.
here's your opportunity to throw up 80, throw up 75, at least 60, hit 50, make it look ugly. Not to say that you need to score more points, but it's definitely got to be a substantial victory. Let's just put it that way. Or else it could come back to bite you at the end of the season. All right, staying at 3:30, LSU and Florida in the Swamp. The tag is 4.5-point road favorites. 55 is our total here. Talked a little bit about Florida. You were discussing the quarterback situation. Been extremely disappointing. Napier coming back next year. It's understood. I think people got to realize the NIL is a different monster these days, and you got to pay everybody. You can't be writing these checks left and right for these coaches. That's my assumption. I don't know if you got an ad on that. They're 4-5 on this season. Of course, we already talked a ton about LSU at 6-3. They cannot afford another loss to really mess things up. 4.5-point favorite on Saturday. Where you at?
Yeah, if you want to go on a little side quest real quick, Billy Napier coming back. I think Mike Norvell will be back, and I think Brent Venables will be back. If this was 3 or 4 years ago, those schools are probably saying, screw it, we'll write you the check and pay you the buyout. But they're roped in. Mike Norvell got that extension because he was rumored for the Bama job. Brent Venables, I still don't know why he got the extension. I was really against it when it happened this offseason. And then Napier, I'm kind of on the side of Napier just because he has the quarterback. And I think if he's able to go to administration and was able to convince him, like, this is my guy, that kind of would give him another year. But if Lagway leaves, then they're kind of screwed. But that was a situation too where they don't have a president right now, so that would be an interim president letting a AD hire his third football coach. That rarely ever happens in the SEC. So that's my little side tangent on kind of some of the coaches on the hot seat potentially. You might not have many major opportunities or openings this year. But I like the under of 54.5 in that game. LSU's defense has been playing better when they haven't been playing mobile quarterbacks. When they play mobile quarterbacks, it's been a bit of a different story. But also, if Lagway is playing, I don't think he's going to be 100%. If that backup or the third string's in there, I watched that game against Texas last week, really struggled to move the ball. I think that could be an ugly one. You got an LSU team that just got their head kicked in like a must-win spot, but they have no room to feel sorry for themselves because they're still alive in the SEC. So they got to go out and get this win. But I think it's going to be an ugly one. I got that on my card this week, under 54.5.
Yeah, Florida State had to, I believe, fire both coordinators, if I'm not mistaken. So both coordinators out, but Norvell with the buyout, $60 million buyout. Yeah, you ain't firing him, Holmes. You ain't firing
and I don't
him.
think Florida State's got the money like Texas A&M did with Jimbo. So that's the Atkins, I believe, was the defensive coordinator. He was like rumored for some potential big time head coaching jobs last year. Like he was one of the main candidates, and now he's without a job just a year later. It's crazy what Jordan Travis breaking his leg against North Alabama of all teams did to that program and the trajectory, because that was a team that was my team last year. I had them 20-1 all year to win the national title from the preseason. And ever since that leg injury, man, the trajectory of that program is plummeted. But how do you respond to that next year? Like, how do you have convince guys to come play for you out of the portal, or recruits? I know recruits have been leaving there left and right too. That's an ugly situation right now in Tallahassee.
Well, I would say you don't want to build a program by nothing but the transfer portal. I would assume that probably is not something that would lead you to building a solid program, but it is out of necessity. He has to hit the portal, and I mean, at the end of the day, dude, they fight. Like, that's how I would react to it. Like, what's wrong with chalking it up as a bad season? It happened. It's been a horrible season.
We're gonna really bad. They were number 9. They were number 9 in the country going into the year, and they're probably gonna finish 2-10. They have Charleston Southern left. Is that a win even at this point?
I'm just saying from the standpoint of, like, obviously it hit the fan. Everybody's got to take a step back. We're running it back. You're not like, why fire the OC and the DC? I get things have been bad. I understand that, but maybe keep everything together, reset, bring it in, hit new from the transfer portal. At least you're showing some of these kids like, hey, they know what they're coming into play for. I don't know. I'm sure there's ways of looking at it both ways. But if I'm a recruit, if I'm somebody looking at Florida State right now, I'm not looking at them as they're on solid ground, to say the least. So I might look elsewhere. But if you kept that OC, that DC coming back, who, from what I read, are going to be okay. They're going to get jobs instantly. Not that bad the previous season, atrocious this year. We get it. I just think it might have been in their favor to keep everybody back with Norvell, but that's a tough spot. And Norvell's got to really believe that, dude, if he doesn't deliver next season, he's absolutely done. But at the end of the day, dude, you want to fire me? I'll take my $40 million. I'll take my $40 million. See you. I'm good.
Yep. Yeah, and go be a head coach at like North Texas or something and do that, because he was on the hot seat going into last year. Last year was
That's true.
looked at as kind of like a make or break year, but also it's Florida State too, where it's like coaches are going to want to go there for the opportunity to be the OC or DC and look at it as a stepping stone to a potential head coach job in a few years down the line.
All right, so your team this year is not in action, so let's take this brief moment to talk about Miami and that tough loss last week, Georgia Tech again. Where do you stand on Hurricanes right now? That is a tough conference because there's some teams that are probably going to be tied at the end of this season as well, but where are you at right now with Hurricanes?
Yeah, this week is weird. Like, it's a heavy bye week. You look at a bunch of teams, and Miami is one of those. It's kind of a down slate this week, but I still think Miami, I'd put their offense up against anyone in the country. They show time and time again they can go out there, put up 40, 50. Just some of the silly mistakes, like Cam Ward is making a few bonehead plays. And I remember seeing a tweet about him or a quote from like a coach at the beginning of the year. Cam Ward's either going to take this team to 6-6 or go 12-0 and win the Heisman. And he certainly has looked more like the Heisman and the 12-0 team. Still certainly a path there for them to win the ACC and go to the playoff. But they have to win out. And if they have another loss, it's probably going to be SMU and Clemson going there. So no more room for error. ACC and Big 12 are both, without a doubt, one big leagues. Then you get the G5. And then the rest are the one SEC auto, the one Big 10 auto, and then kind of pick your poison between the last, whatever it is, 5 or 6 teams between the Big 10 and the SEC. And it goes back to someone's going to get left out. But I'm still holding that over 9 win ticket for Miami. Just win that one. The ACC, I think, was 4-1 as well. And I have a 25-1 like bonus bet on them to win the title and a 20-1 or 22-1 on Cam Ward to win the Heisman. So still got some hope left. It might need an injury by Genty or Hunter for Cam Ward to get the Heisman, but can certainly still cash in that over 9 and the ACC too as well. And I would consider that a success for the people laughing at me at the beginning of the year with Miami.
Why can't we get the Hurricanes and SMU in the championship game? Like, that's just make that happen.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. I think the only other team that would probably still be a solid game would be Clemson. But yeah, definitely rooting for SMU Miami. That might be the highest Power 5 total of the year. Like it might be like 73.5, I think, if those two teams were facing off in the ACC title game.
All right. Well, SMU's in action this weekend. I don't think it's a lock that they run the table. I just don't. And this weekend they got, look, Boston College isn't a team to write home about, but it's a team that we watched a few times and they made life interesting a few times on television as well. I think it's a 19-point spread. Yeah, 19. SMU 3:30 kickoff, 54. Any chance BC hangs tough on Saturday?
I think they're in a little bit of disarray right now. Thomas Castellanos got benched on Saturday, stepped away from the program, and now they announced today that he will be entering the transfer portal. So you have a backup now in for Boston College. Maybe Castellanos wasn't beloved in the locker room, or maybe he wasn't really getting along with teammates. Maybe they rally around the backup quarterback. But SMU knows they're in a position where they have no room really to slip up right now. I think since that BYU game, and obviously the BYU loss doesn't look as bad, but they've been on a roll, SMU, and I think they can continue to do that this week. The thing I liked most about Boston College with Castellanos, his ability to run the football and lower possessions for an SMU team that's able to go out there and put up points. The last time we saw SMU, they were putting up 48 points on Pitt. They put up 34 on Louisville, 40 on Stanford, 42 Florida State, 66 on TCU. They can score with just about the best of them. So you said it best. let's just get Miami and SMU fast forward to the ACC title game, because that would be a fun track meet potentially in that game. But I like SMU to take care of business this week.
Is Castellanos going to be hot in the portal?
I think so. I don't know with a power conference team, but like he just screams a guy that goes to like a school in the American and is like the American player of the year. Like send him down to like Memphis or something, and he just like lights it up. Takes Memphis to 10-2. He's a fun player to watch, but
Yeah.
I always thought it was a weird fit with Bill O'Brien. Like a pro style drop back system. He's your prototypical college quarterback, zone read, let him run, but he can also make some plays with his arms. He's definitely going to have some suitors in the portal, but I'm interested to see if any more news comes out, if it was just kind of a benching and he got upset, or if there was more to the story about that.
All right, Boise State, real quick on this one. Give me 30 seconds against San Jose State. They're 13.5-point road favorites. This could be a spot that they trip up here. I don't know a damn thing about San Jose State, but there's a lot of pressure on Boise State. We're getting at the end here. Of course, you got to like when you do have the opportunity to watch Boise State. That's a fun team. They've thrown up some crooked numbers. Where are you at in that one?
I'm going to take San Jose State to keep it
Hello.
close in that one. The 75th best run defense, which isn't great, just a little bit below average. But their former coach their head coach right now is the former Navy coach. So he's seen just about every different running scheme in his life that you can. And so he's definitely had to cook up some pretty creative run defenses in the past. He's going to do the old kitchen sink, throw it at Ashton Genty and hope something hits in this one. That's your best chance. Force Maddox Madsen to go out there and throw the ball on you. And I think that in this kind of scenario as well for Boise State, if they are going to be the G5 team, they need a game like this where the quarterback goes out there and wins it, and Genty just doesn't do it. Because if they're playing like in Ohio State, Genty has been a fantastic talent this year, obviously a great player, potentially going to win the Heisman. But you're going to need to be able to throw the ball against these power school teams. I think they're going to need a game like this where Maddox Madsen has to go out there and make some key plays to win. And I think the San Jose State rushing defense and the coordination of it could give Genty some problems. So with that being said, Genty will run for 400 yards, but kind of looking at it like that angle that the coach has seen every single running play in the history of football. He's going to have a few kind of looks up his sleeve, I think, in this one.
All right, let's get to the big one. Let's talk about Tennessee and Georgia here. What's the latest with Nico? 10-point spread. Them dogs favored at home. I don't like that number, man. I just think that's a little disrespectful. Unless you tell me Nico doesn't play. Where are we at with that, though?
Yeah, I think that's kind of baked into the number. When that came out, I was like, all right, that has to be like he's not playing or he's questionable. It's a concussion with him. The backup quarterback, Gaston Moore, has only thrown 42 passes in his career. So not a very experienced backup quarterback there. But in this spot, like if you're not looking for a side in this one, I really like the under of 48.5. Tennessee hasn't given up more than 20 points in a game all year. We know what Georgia's defense can look like at times, but Tennessee's defensive line is just as good, if not better, than Ole Miss. And that's where Ole Miss dominated last week up front. And it's crazy to say that Georgia got dominated in the trenches, but that's how Ole Miss built their roster to beat Georgia up front in the trenches. Tennessee is built just like that. I think they have the ability on the defensive end to just get to Carson Beck. And if you get to him, he's going to turn it over. He's turned it over 14 times this year, has 11 interceptions on the season. If they're able to kind of flip field position, get the ball in some short field territories, and have a really good running game still with Dylan Sampson, even if Nico's out, I think that they can certainly hang in this one. If Nico's playing, I think they're a live dog for sure, because all they're going to need to do is hit one or two of those deep shots. And Georgia's secondary is not what we've seen in the past. So if Nico's playing, I'm probably going to even take Tennessee on the money line and take a swing with that there. Eliminate Georgia, send them packing, send them home. But I think the under 48.5 is a play here. I think Tennessee does everything they can to limit possessions and then go out there and they force a couple turnovers on Carson Beck. I think this one's played in the low 40s. You're looking at like a 24-20 type game, and you're hitting the under 48.5 there.
Ooh, all right. I like that angle. And got one last week, finally, went with Ole Miss in that spot. And I'll tell you what, 2 drives into that game, I wasn't feeling good. That's for damn sure.
Sack, pick, touchdown.
Yeah,
and then Tua comes in. That kid had a hell of a drive. Like, that is a season-saving drive from that kid. I thought he was going to go in there and play, but great drive, marches them right back down the field, and then they're right back in it. That was I don't think it's been talked about enough this week how important that kind of bounce back off that drive was, but super impressive performance by Ole Miss, and another team where they have a bad loss to Kentucky. They have that loss at LSU, which they were winning most of the game. They kind of gave it away at the end there. But there's no way you can tell me watching Ole Miss that they're not one of the 12 best teams in the country. They have to be in the college football playoff.
I agree. Well, they spent a ton of money in the offseason, right?
Yeah,
Like,
they were my SEC pick, and they're still alive to win the SEC. But if you're making me pick between Ohio State, Oregon, and an SEC team to be my national champion, I'm going with Ole Miss right now over Alabama, over Tennessee, and over Georgia, and over Texas. I'm taking Ole Miss. I think the experience there, I think the defensive line's there, and they've been missing some playmakers on offense. Once those guys are fully back, that's going to be a group you don't want to mess with, and they look like they're hitting their stride. 63 against Arkansas, 28 against Georgia, and the defense is as legit as a group in the country. Lane's kind of pushing the right buttons right now. Ole Miss is definitely a force to be reckoned with. They just got to they can't run into any slip ups over these next 2 weeks with Florida and then Mississippi State in their last two games.
yeah, I'm right there with you, Beef. There's no reason why I'm backing Ohio State to win it all at plus 320. Oregon at plus 340. I just feel like it could be Oregon's year. That's a really tough team. Texas at plus 450. I'll pass. Georgia, they're going to be gone after this weekend, I believe. I think Tennessee might even get them outright. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. 10-1 Ole Miss. Bama 10-1. I'm always going to try and talk myself into Alabama. Penn State, no, 18-1. Notre Dame, good grief, at 20-1 right now. Tennessee, Indiana, 25-1. Miami, 40-1. Clemson, 50-1. SMU, 50-1. And then we'll stop there. But I just brought up Indiana at 25-1. Next week's look ahead line. Do you know the number against Ohio State?
I didn't see that. I'm going to guess.
If you had to guess.
Is it out yet?
It is out.
I'm going to guess Ohio State minus 7.5.
Got to go go north.
Really? 9.5?
9.5 open yesterday. I believe it opened. I saw somebody talking about it. And then today, 10.5. So Ohio State is a 10.5 point favorite against Indiana.
And when you still look at the college football playoff, just odds to make the playoffs, Indiana is minus 450 still. So I think that goes to say like they're baking in a loss there, and they still have Indiana at 11-1, probably going to the playoff, which is interesting because who have they beat?
College football, you gotta love it, man. You start one way over here, and then where you end up, you only know. But that's why you got to enjoy these weekends, man. Like, don't miss Travis Hunter when he opens up at 60-1 to win the Heisman, and now he's minus 190 or something like that. It's ridiculous. We'll see what happens for Colorado's perspective, though. A lot of fun in this episode, Beef. We hit on a lot. Once again, Thursday nights, we got a lot going down. Come on out to see us. We'll be live in Manayunk, hanging out at McGillicuddy's for the Birds and the Commanders. It is a Christmas tree lighting night, Beef. So come on down. We're going to sing some Christmas carols. Yeah, we're going to sing some Christmas carols, drink some eggnog, try to stay warm, and root on the Philadelphia Eagles, hopefully to a victory in Manayunk. But coming up next at Xfinity Live, Green Legion Radio, live from 1100 Social, right in the middle of it all, outside Xfinity Live in South Philadelphia. For Ryan Beef Coyle, I'm Sean Brace. If you missed anything, at foxphogambler.com. Talk to you next time.